New York. We landed in New York. We came on the 18th of April 1999, and we went to live in Connecticut, West Hartford, Connecticut. We are traditional Orthodox.
Modern Orthodox.
It's modern Orthodox here, but in South Africa we were traditional Orthodox. Yes, we went to shul all the time. Have a kosher home there and here. What else?
Well, the differences in people's Jewish practices in South Africa is very different than it is in America. They've only very recently started to have synagogues that are not Orthodox. So when we grew up, when I grew up,
That's true.
and my mom obviously grew up, they were only Orthodox shuls. So now they've started, I think they have one or two Reform shuls. There's no conservative in South Africa. So people are mainly either religious and observant and Orthodox, or people are traditional and Orthodox, which is kind of like a modern Orthodox here, where they may not be Shomrei Shabbos, but they observe all of the holidays and they observe Shabbat and keep kosher and all those
customs. We still have a kosher kitchen, we still eat kosher, we still light candles, we still observe every Jewish holiday, we still go to shul. In South Africa, we would always go to shul on a Friday night and a Saturday morning. Here we go mostly Saturday mornings. Friday night, my husband sometimes goes on a Friday night, but for us Friday night's difficult because we do Shabbos dinner, so we have to watch the food, make the food and watch the food. In South Africa we didn't have to because we had help, we had maids, so we could leave it to them and we could always go to shul. Every Friday night was shul night. And that's how our children, we were brought up, our children as well, always going to shul on a Friday night and most Saturday morning. I grew up, I think more when my children grew up, yes. There was a little bit of anti-Semitism.
There was more than a little bit of
anti-Semitism. There was anti-Semitism even with you growing up, but you were sheltered.
I was very sheltered.
You lived in a Jewish area.
I lived in a Jewish area where we only mixed with Jews. I can't even recall ever having a non-Jewish friend. So I didn't really experience it.
I went to a Jewish school, but I also went to a
public
school. At public school in the lower grades, there wasn't really anti-Semitism. Where I started experiencing it was when I was in the military, and then there was anti-Semitism. You could see people who were brought up with anti-Semitic views, and it came out then. And then later years in college and so on, it wasn't that rough. It was an undercut. It was underlying. It wasn't specific. In the army, sometimes there were some issues that came up that you had to deal with. Today, there's a lot of Muslims in South Africa. And so there's anti-Semitism from that side as well. The movement has grown over the last number of years, especially in Cape Town area where they come from. So there's some anti-Semitism there from the Muslims.
But when I went to Jewish day school my entire life, but we were part of our sports teams and everything played against other private schools throughout the area, and there was a lot of anti-Semitism with some of the schools that were in the south of Johannesburg area. A lot of those schools, they displayed, when they used to come play our rugby team, they would say anti-Semitic things to our boys, and they would treat them badly. And I also remember when it's one of the biggest Jewish day schools in South Africa that I went to. It's called King David Linksfield, and it's similar to a Beth Tefillah type of school. And when I started there, they just had a simple fence around the perimeter. But while I was in high school, they had to build a very large bulletproof fence around the school because there were a lot of threats coming in.
And what was going on around the world.
We had many instances where they shut down school, we had to stay inside, and there were cars parked outside that they thought were some kind of threat and things like that. Thankfully, nothing ever actually happened, but they took precautions to make sure that we were all safe.
One of my wonderful memories is going to the game parks. We would go every July and take the children. That was one of the highlights of our year, was to go every July for a week to the game park, and we would go with friends, and we would get we would all stay in big cottages, and it was a wonderful time in our lives for us. It literally took me 9.5 years to settle down and get used to living in America. I know it was very difficult for Daniela as well. I think it was a little bit easier for my sons because they were younger, and they went to school, they could make lots of friends. For Mark and I, it was more difficult to make new friends, and also we really didn't have much family here. We went to West Hartford, Connecticut, because my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live there, and their children live there, so we went there because of them. But it was just very difficult to break into the American way of life, even though we come from an English-speaking country.
In a Western country.
In a Western country, the culture here is different. People think differently, do differently, so it was not easy. Every time I went to South Africa, I would come back and I would pack my bags and say, I want to go back home, literally. And I know you can speak for yourself, but for me it was very hard. After 9.5 years though, I came back 1 year from South Africa, and I realized that this was home. And I no longer refer to when I go to South Africa, I no longer refer to it as going back home. I refer to it as going there for a holiday to see my family. So it takes a long time to settle down, very, very long time.